Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I, Megha Govil, on behalf of Her World India, would like to welcome you all to the talk show series where we would be discussing writing and creative pursuits in COVID-19 pandemic. We feel privileged to be hosting this show in collaboration with Policy Center and Gender Lab, Miranda House, Delhi University. Policy Center and Gender Lab provides research opportunities in the sphere of gender studies, social sciences, and policy shape-up. So today we have with us Ananya Mukherjee, who is a senior corporate communications leader, storyteller, and an author of Indian origin living in Singapore. Her first book, Out Satya, received a rave review from Indian and international media. Her second book, An Unborn Desire, will hit the bookstores soon. We congratulate you, ma'am. We also have with us the founder and editor in chief of Her World India, Ms. Rakhi Bakshi. She is a veteran media professional who has served as media advisor to Lok Sabha Speaker and was also the show host on Rajya Sabha TV. She has covered the Kargil War and the Iraq War. She has worked with many social organizations. Um, Now, Her World India is a brainchild of Ms. Rakhi Bakshi. Her World India strives for an inclusive and gender equal world. It's a safe space where social and contemporary issues get featured. During the session, I request all the attendees to kindly keep themselves on mute and turn off their videos. If anyone has any questions, they are requested to put it in the chat box. All questions will be taken up at the end of the session. Thank you so much.
Okay, and that's over to me from Micah. Micah, thank you so much for that very gracious introduction, as you guys always do. And I'm always privileged here to be on part of Her World India and Her World India team. I really welcome all of you, ladies and gentlemen, well wishers, friends, brothers, and sisters. As we start this talk show today, as it already introduced, I'm truly privileged to have a very dear, I would say, a social media friend now, and also a celebrity in her own right. Miss Ananya Mukherjee joins us from Singapore. She's really stolen that time out to talk to Asia, and I'm really happy about that. We have already been, very privileged to be partnering with Miranda House of Delhi University, and I think that's again something that we all feel very proud of. So Ananya, as we know, is a writer, but a writer who traveled long back from India to Singapore. How does writing come to her? What is the process that she gets into? We are going to talk to her about that, especially in pandemic. Has it changed the way she's thought about writing or putting the pen onto the paper? Ananya, let me start by asking you first, uh, where this writer in you begin? I mean, can you really tell us and share with us as to that time where you really thought that you really wanted to be a writer and you wanted to grow as a writer? Ananya, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Our World India. And thank you so much, Rocky, for having me on this show. I'm very privileged to be speaking to all of you tonight. Yeah, the journey as a writer, to be very honest, it began in 1986, and I was kind of pushed into it. How? And that's interesting for young writers to know. I was assigned a school homework. It was about it's a very weird topic, the autobiography of a broken umbrella. So, who in the same line can think about a broken umbrella? And I just struggled with it. So, I went to my sister for some help. I didn't even know what autobiographies meant. So, I went to her and said, "Hey, Deeds, what is a autobiography? And how is an autobiography about a broken umbrella supposed to be written?" So she was usually very helpful, 4 years elder to me, like a little, young guardian at home. But she pushed me aside and she said, "I'm not going to be doing your homework. Go figure out." So that was when I started. That was my first attempt at writing something and, getting into the skin of something which was alienated from my body and broken umbrella in this case. So I started writing it and I wrote. And when I went to school, surprisingly, the principal who used to teach us English in that grade six, she gave me a 6 out of 10 out of, for that homework and an excellent written in red ink. I think that was the biggest motivator for a little girl where she put in her first effort into understanding a perspective which was so different from her own.
Hmm.
It, wandering into a world that she had never been to and then being appreciated for it. So I would say it started really young. And I think I was very, very impressed with journalism at a very early stage. And by the time I finished school, I was absolutely sure that all I wanted to do was be a journalist and be a writer. So it started fairly young. And yeah, I'm glad I'm one of those people who's probably living their dreams, because not all of us are able to live our childhood dreams, and definitely.
Okay, so but you call yourself now a corporate, communicator, a storyteller, uh, mixing all into one. What is it that you weave in terms of, as for example, when you begin your writing, uh, how are you going to present that writing? That's where you become a storyteller. How do you really put your thoughts onto the paper, or these days onto the computer screen? And then what is it that you want to tell, and how? What is that process like, that creative process like?
So I think it's very different. I have been able to partition and compartmentalize it in my mind, because as a journalist, I was a business journalist, which is very factual and report based and statistics and data. And, there is no room for creativity, if I may put it that way. When I'm writing a story, I let my imagination run wild. There's a lot of spontaneity. There is a lot of internalization, introspection. When I'm doing a storytelling session, it's more verbal. It needs to sound good. It needs to be animated. So I think there are three different ways of managing words. And I think what matters is practice and making sure that each of these verticals, as we call it, maybe in communications, do not overlap. Because if you're trying to tell a story which becomes like a document of facts, it loses interest, it loses that punch, it loses that energy. If you're writing a report that starts sounding very flowery and imaginative, then it loses its essence of fact finding and fact building. And of course, if your storytelling is without the emotions and the expressions, then it becomes boring and mundane. So I think these three are three different art forms, all dealing with words, but the presentation is different. I can't hear you, Rakhi.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible now.
So writing is catharsis. We are also talking, Ananya, in a time of crisis right now, and it's been more than a year that we've been struggling with the situation that is in front of us world over. In India, of course, we have seen so much of pain in the recent times. Um, as in other countries as well. Pandemic has also taught us many things. But how somebody as a writer would look at this crisis time? How do you think crisis, does it halt the creative process? Does it make any changes in the way, the patterns of creative writing? What kind of difference does it make to you, Ananya, as a writer, to be in a situation of pandemic?
I think it makes a huge difference, because when you're in a state of calm, you are more positive, you are looking at life in a different light. As a writer, I think we are more sensitive to the environment around us. And if the environment around us is gloomy and full of despair, the chances of us getting affected by it are very high. And it has definitely influenced the way I write now. It is more about internalizing, more about introspection, looking within, and also looking at the society with a lot of pain and angst and frustration sometimes, which is not there at other point of time, because we're all going through crisis. We're all going through different phases of emotions, and as a writer, we respond to those emotions, and that gets reflected in the writing very interestingly. And like you said, it is therapeutic. So oftentimes when I see a lot of injustice around me, when I see a lot of unjust things happening, through my writing I want to bring justice to it. And I was explaining it to a friend the other day. Like, I killed a man in a story because I couldn't, in reality, pass that judgment in a court. So I wanted to make sure that, he gets his due. So in my story, I made sure that the bad man or the villain actually gets his due. So I think it is a way of venting your inner strength, your weakness, your anger, your angst, and at the same time representing a lot of people who feel similarly, but maybe not are not able to voice it the way you can as a writer.
Talk to us about your books also, Ardha Satya and the other one also. Um, how did it come by? I mean, what was it going on that really presented the book, and the book which was born out of what kind of emotion at that particular time, which became the form of a book.
Right. So when I started my first book, Adhisatya, actually was released in 2016, and it took me about 5 years to write that book. It's a collection of 20 short stories. And I was very influenced by the fact that I still am very influenced by the fact that there are no truths, full truths, or universal truths, and half full lies, right? There's always a shade. There's nothing black and white in real life. There's always a shade of gray. And I wanted to bring out that emotion through the book, through those stories, the grays of life, the intersection between the two. If you look at the cover, it's actually a Venn diagram which has two circles intersecting at one point, and that intersection is where our lives are. So the reality of our lives live within those intersections. And I wanted to bring those stories. They are stories of acceptance. They are stories very human, delving deep into human emotions. They're very human. I was doing business journalism before that, and they were, like I said, it's very factual, full of statistics, full of numbers. And I wanted to move out of that and write something which was closer to the heart, which was soulful, which was meant to be simple and meant to actually touch people. So, luckily, that book did well. The stories were accepted, and most of the stories are about acceptance. They are about people accepting that life is between those intersections. There are no good people and bad people and very bad people and very good people. They're always a mix, and that's what the book was about. The next one, An Unborn Desire, is actually, as the name suggests, it's about, again, a lot of human relationships, human emotions, and this is a collection of 15 short stories. But the interesting part of this book is that each of the stories are actually based as a background. I have used different parts of the world where I traveled to. So I travel quite a bit. I'm an avid traveler. And because of COVID, of course, I'm home, but I'm generally always living out of a suitcase.
How
Yes,
important it is actually for a writer to be traveling a lot, and how traveling actually changes you as a writer in terms of the all influences that you're imbibing inside you, and that becomes kind of chapters inside your heart first and then on to your writing.
it is very important. I think one, travel opens up so much of the world to you, a world that you haven't had the privilege to know before. It also makes you more accepting of cultures, of people, of different kind of psychological wiring that may not exist in your social circle or in your circle of comfort. uh, so that's the first thing. Travel opens up your mind to a different culture, and progressively so. I think we need to be more inclusive of the world around us. And it does impact writing. So this book, the second one, like I said, is based on different parts of the world. And again, it's I remember as a child, I saw the world through books because there was no internet in our times, remember. So we would know what's happening in another part of the world, the culture, the food they ate, the clothes they wore, the accent they used, or the local colloquial language they spoke, all through books. In our times, of course, we are privy to a lot more information thanks to the internet. But there are those certain cultural nuances that remain confined within these countries. And unless you have traveled, unless you've been there, you never quite get that spirit. So
Another question that I really, really want to ask is about, this theme, of course, has been, used by many writers. And in fact, the name that really immediately comes to me, and I keep saying it, is of Jhumpa, who talks about her writing. And she says that how being out of India for so many years and traveling to different countries and finding homes at different places has also nurtured her own style of writing. Would you think the same way about your writing, that you've been out of India, an Indian, born as you were just sharing with me in Jammu, and then traveling to Singapore where you're now, and finding a home there, but your soil is here, maybe your heart is here, but much part of your heart actually is now there. So how, as a writer, that influences your writing?
I think we're all more global citizens in today's times. We see the world as, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. So it's all within the same universe. And it does impact. It does impact. The travel bit impacts. The understanding of different cultures impact. And as I told you, I was born in Jammu, but I've lived across 15 states in India. Now, that in itself has impacted so much of my understanding of the Indian culture. So it is very interesting because I've lived in India in all the 27 years of my life, and I lived in India. I have lived across 15 states now, so every state is home to me. Similarly, when I moved here about 18 years back and I have traveled to 47 countries, all those countries, I've carried something back with me from those countries. And they are not just memories and photographs to be posted on Facebook, but more. And I think that more, that learning is so important. I'll give you a very small example. I was in Colombia in South America about just before the pandemic. And there are people, I mean, it's not a very rich country. We know about the strife that goes on, politically unstable, drugs and unsafe. And people are still smiling and singing, and, they are so happy. And I spoke to one of my colleagues, and we were driving back to the airport. And I said, the best thing that I can see here is how happy people are. And he said, of course, we are Latino. We are always happy. Those are the kind of things you carry back with you, that with so little, with so much happening around, people are just so proud to be who they are, where they are, and still so happy. So that's just one of the examples. I've traveled to inner parts of Africa where there is no food, there is no electricity, no water, and people are still happy. They're still smiling, and they're very, very welcoming of guests, very hospitable. And then you wonder, am I really entitled? Do I suffer from this feeling of entitlement? What is wrong? Why do we crib about little things in life? So it has changed me as a person, and a lot of that is reflected through my writing in the stories that I bring from these countries.
In fact, one of the things, Ananya, we saw is also about the whole migrant crisis, and migrant labor moving from here and there also told us about traveling again. It told us about movement, told us about transport, told us about displacement, of not attaching to places, kind of thing. So, in the pandemic, I want to come to that again. How has been your prism to look at life, look at especially women, because women have a different territory altogether world over. It is their world which is a little different from others, because they are within different corners of the world. They have their own little windows, or maybe these windows sometimes are open, sometimes very difficult to open those windows. So these realities surface, manifest itself in too many ways. So, as a woman and a writer, how are you looking at these things?
I think there are different layers of the society that is managing the pandemic differently. For some women, it is still a struggle, and the struggle is, how do I feed my family when I don't have my daily job? So it starts from there. For some, it is, if there are people who are in relationships that are difficult, and they are now caught in the same room or the same they're confined within the same walls as the person who probably abuses them. So for them, it is very difficult. There are working women who are working from home and working at home, as they say, because they're now doing the dishes, they're attending calls, and they have no time for themselves. So I see a lot of frustration also building, a lot of frustration building, not knowing how am I supposed to play superwoman all the time for so long. So I think that is another aspect. I do see a lot of having said that, I do see a lot of people saying that they are stuck at home. And I always take it up with them saying, why do you feel you're stuck at home? And if you're stuck at home, then there is something you need to work on yourself and on your relationships, because home isn't supposed to be the place where you should feel stuck, right? I mean, we all know it's very difficult, but do something about yourself, invest in yourself, have a, develop a hobby, do something, or make your relationships work, because that's important. You can't be sitting at home and feeling claustrophobic, because if that's what's happening, it's you need to rethink, you need to relook at, revisit your relationships, and and the environment and yourself. I mean, do you really need all the attention all the time? Can you sit with a book? Can you sing? Can you write? Can can you do something constructive for yourself? Can you just take up a new course online and maybe keep yourself engaged? So I have these conversations, and I have I mean, obviously not everybody likes it, because I think somewhere down the line, before the pandemic, we had all developed this very strong sense of entitlement. And this pandemic has taught us that not everything is to be taken for granted. And therefore, I think each one of us need to be very, very grateful for every single day, for every single moment that we have been granted, and the fact that we are all alive and having these conversations. I mean, I could have been infected. Anybody else who's attending this call could have been infected and be somewhere else, right? Um, so I think that sense of gratitude this pandemic has taught us. And if it hasn't, then it take a break, take a step back and think about it. You are not entitled to every good thing in life. You are not entitled. Nobody comes with that sense of entitlement. You earn it, and if you're lucky enough, you get it. But I think realizing that and being grateful is something that is for here to stay. And there is a sense of fear, there's which is natural, because everybody is suffering from a sense of fear. But I think that sense of fear will also teach us to value things more, value people more, value relationships more, value everything that we have around us more. So this is going to last a long time, and we will see a lot of changes. And I was talking to my husband this afternoon and saying, I think a lot of people will internalize, because you can't go out, you can't observe, you can't see others, you don't know what's happening in the world. It's time to reflect upon yourself, and a lot of people will do that, and maybe we'll come out as a much better society, much better human beings. Raki, I can't hear you.
Yeah, you can now.
Yeah, I can hear
So,
you now.
of course, we'll have one or two questions also, Ananya, but then there are a lot of these young women, and we are in the pandemic also talking about their future, their aspirations and ambitions, and how their dreams that they should walk on. What is your message? What is your dialogue with them on this platform? In fact, I think even our dialogue is very important. We are two women here talking in the pandemic, and that itself, I think, is a very nice creative gesture and outlet that we are both rejoicing at this time. Likewise, so many young women who are watching and who will be watching this video, of course, should learn from these conversations, from these creative outlets, from the writings, from being becoming a writer in your own to actually putting it out in the public.
I think as a mother of a 21-year-old, I can very much link or connect to the young women out there. The one thing that I always tell my daughter, and I would like to say that to everybody else, is get off your digital world. We are using a digital platform. Use it to learn, to understand, and see the world better. But learn to become human. I think we need to be forgetting that. We are just forgetting what a touch, feel, sense, that means. Which means for sure go out and meet your friends for coffee when there is, the circumstances allow you to do it. I think that's number one. The pandemic has taught us to be more, to value what it means to be human. And I think we were all losing it. And especially this new generation that has grown up in a world of gadgets, and is so surrounded by it right now because there is no other alternative. But for them to start valuing the importance of human touch, I think that's number one. The number two thing is to be patient. And this is again a generation of entitlement. And I know they won't like me saying this, but this is a generation that has grown up. They hate the idea that a Wi-Fi connection will take, more than 20 seconds or 10 seconds to work. So they have somewhere down the line forgotten what it means or not learned. They're learning it the hard way, which is tough. To be patient, that they need to, this is just a part of life and things like these happen. So this will change, and of course a new dawn will be there, a corona free world will be there. So a lot of them feel very depressed because they are not being able to do the things that they wanted to do. A lot of their plans had to be stalled. So I think that's most important, to understand that everything is ephemeral, including your troubles and including corona. So it's not going to last forever. So that's the first thing. That's the second thing. And I think in terms of for young authors, young aspiring writers, I would say meet people, try and have conversations, because I see this generation again not being able to have conversations because not everything will come out of you. You could be very creative, but your creativity will find fodder from your conversations with people. You will find stories everywhere. So you need to be observing those stories. You need to be coming across people. You need to be interacting with people and learning from them. I think that's again something that I always tell everybody who's interested in writing, that observe, and the whole world is full of characters. So you don't have to create everything from scratch because everything is kind of ready made. And the other bit is empathy. I think that piece is very, very, very important. And having lived through the pandemic as a writer, if you don't have that blue sauce, is what I call it, it's your secret sauce. If you don't have empathy in you, you will never be able to step into somebody else's shoes, not into the skin of your characters, and never be able to write like them. You have to think, you have to become them, you have to emote, and you have to become them when you write about them, or you write as in, on their behalf. So I think it's important to develop that sense of empathy, and empathy can come with human interaction, not by, by not sitting away from people, not being cocooned in your little world. And um, and that's a great quality. Our grandfathers, our grandmothers, they could just strike a conversation with anybody. They could sit and chat with the milkman, they could have a conversation with the driver about khet khamar, and all the fasal kaisi hui and all that. And you have to learn, because that's how you begin to see the world from other people's eyes, and that's how you connect with people. Otherwise your writing will become a journal. You will be the only one connecting with it and seeing it and feeling good about it. The rest of the world will not connect. I think that's the message I want to leave the youngsters with.
Okay. So we have a question from Chandni. Chandni, you can come in also. You're writing about what is your biggest source of inspiration as a writer. You can come in and also ask the question.
Yes, ma'am. Hi. I think ma'am already answered it to some extent, but I honestly I wanted to know, ma'am, how do you keep yourself motivated as a writer, especially in these dark times on an everyday basis?
I think I'm very much in love with life, Chandni. I'm blessed to be wired that way. So I'm a super positive kind of a person. So we do this MBTI and resilience and optimism tests in our corporate world. And I shocked my trainer because I had a 99% optimism or something. And he said he's never seen someone like that. But having said that, jokes apart, I think it's important to derive sustenance from life around you and be grateful. And every time when I count, what's around me, so I'm very practical in some ways. So when I just count what's around me, everything around me that really matters to me is all safe, is all fine, and then I'm good. And it just takes that much for us to take a step back and say, am I good today? Yes, I'm good. Because everything around me that I wanted is in shape. I think getting inspiration from life, that is the biggest motivator. And if you inspire yourself, you will never run out of fuel, because it kind of refuels itself, right? So you're not looking out for somebody else's support, you're just looking at your own strength and your absolutely indomitable spirit and your incorrigible love for life. This is just one life. You can't let it go by cribbing and feeling sad and gloomy and, you know, feeling frustrated. One day and it's gone. And we need to value that.
Okay, very beautifully said, Ananya. But but now there are all kinds of genres and all kinds of writers. So some would be like really quiet ones who write and then take a long, long time to maybe start the next one. They delve into the process and deliberate upon it, and they sense and smell the air around them, and then maybe start lifting their pen and onto the paper. And there are some who are just churning out very, very fast. So there are all kinds of writers. What is it that you're aiming at, Ananya?
I took 5 years to write my first book, and about again another 5 years to write my second. So, which kind of tells you that I take a lot of time in thinking, and even though I write every day, not everything goes into the book. So, I think creativity is not something that you can fast forward, because whenever you're trying to meet timelines, you're more methodical. You're just trying to get things done, get it off my plate. I've done that. I do that for a living. And I don't want that to come into a passion that I, strongly pursue outside of my work. So I don't work with deadlines anymore when I'm writing. So I need to take my own time. I allow myself my writer's blocks. I allow myself my time and, taking it slow, processing, and actually scrapping off my writing as well. I would write something and then say, no, this doesn't work. And it's just not making any sense to me. Or even relook at my work and say, oh, what did I write? I mean, what crap is this? Who's going to read it? Even I don't like it. So, those things happen. And I think that ensures a quality. I don't know about others, but something that you can be proud of. I don't think fast food is the order of the day when it comes to good quality writing. One needs to really cook it in slow flame and in low flame and add the spices continuously, test it and see, is this what I want? Is this what I want to be, want served on the table with my signature on it? And the one thing that, again, I would like to tell to all young authors is be proud, be super proud of your signature. So anything that has your stamp on it is your brand. So if you do that in a hurry, there are chances that you miss it. So my thought, no one's rushing. There's no time limit here. So long as you feel comfortable, just go ahead and do things set your own time.
I would describe, Ananya, this whole conversation as your love for India. This is like, earlier they used to send postcard notes. This is a note on digital platform on Herbal India. And we as a team can only feel very thankful to you that you shared your, the emotions right now. The word empathy that you've said is my word, I think. So it's a shared word between us and lots of women, I'm sure, and lots of human beings. Thank you for being the woman that you are. Thank you for being the writer that you are. And thank you for being the person, Ananya, that you are, and sharing all these thoughts with us this evening. on Herbal India Talk Show series. So we
Thank you
really wish
so
you
much.
all the best.
Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you. It's a pleasure talking to all of you.